Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Inside Scoop with Alex and Jeff. I'm Alex Dingman.
I'm Jeff Doss. Let's go, guys.
All right, with us today is one of the pioneer men of martial arts, someone I'm very close to, someone who's highly respected amongst everyone in the martial arts world. With us today is John Worley.
Yes,
Welcome,
sir.
Mr. Worley. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Thank you very much for having me. That was a great opening, by the way. I loved watching all that. So it's good to see you, Mr. Doss. It's nice to see you, Mr. Damon, as always. So
Yes,
thank
sir.
you very much for inviting me.
Yes, sir.
Thank
We're
you
excited.
very much.
Yes, thank you. That voice is something that I'll never forget. So to me, it's just the voice of Diamonds. Like it's funny to me. Like there's several voices, especially for me. I'm a big pro wrestling fan. And so there's certain voices when people like are the announcers that kind of, just stand out. And yours is one of those. So
Well, thank you very much. I'll tell you how it happened. I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but just
why not?
Give me a side on the Diamond Nationals and how I became the announcer there. Is that when we first started, we would hire somebody from a radio station and then have them come up and, they would have the professional voice and I would just sit next to them. But then I figured out I was sitting there having to whisper in their ear everything they had to say. And so my partner, Bill Dunkley and Larry Carnahan said, well, how come we're paying him? You're doing it. You're doing it for free. So
right.
That's pretty much how it happened. We just cut out the announcer and I started doing it.
That's awesome.
That's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, that's
I like that.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's great.
Well, again, I was cheap labor, so why not?
There you go.
Well, it ended up, I believe, becoming a learned skill because you weren't just an announcer for the Diamond Nationals. You were an ESPN announcer for the kickboxing days when kickboxing was on ESPN, right?
I did that. Yeah, I did as well. Joe Corley gave me an opportunity to do that. So I need to thank Joe for my 15 minutes of fame, being on ESPN for a couple of years. And so, yeah, I did that. I started out doing that for ESPN. I was kind of a liaison between the live promoters and the network. They needed somebody that would make sure when they got there on site that the promoters were set up properly for what they needed for what ESPN needed in the way of technical stuff, lighting, and all that kind of stuff. So I would be talking to the promoter and then either going to the event itself or talking to them on the phone prior to make sure they had everything lined up. And then from that, they said, well, you got to go out to this show this weekend, and why don't you go ahead and just be the color guy there because Joe can't make it. Well, so once again, I got kind of pushed into a position there, and apparently I didn't pick my nose on camera or anything, so they said, okay, you can do it again.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, for about 2 years there, I did a lot of the color between Joe and me. And then Joe went to New York to try to pursue sponsorship for PKA, and that's when I started doing it pretty much full time.
Okay, all right, and it was something you enjoyed.
Oh yeah, it was great. I mean, it was a lot of work.
Yeah,
I was in the karate schools during the week, and then I'd jump on a plane on a Friday and get to where we were going to go, and then run in there and do the show and make sure everything was ready to go because I still had to do the producer job too. I had to be there to make sure everything was right for the production, and then jump on a plane and get back to Minneapolis on Sunday usually, and then hit the floor on Monday morning teaching again. So
yeah. So how many weekends were you guys doing that?
Well, we were at that time. We were doing for ESPN was putting anything that they could on air at that time.
Correct.
I mean, they were desperate. They didn't have any. The ESPN was just getting started.
Right. Yeah.
They didn't have programming. I mean, you got two little kids doing the hula hoop out in the front yard. They put them on television. They just needed programming. So
wow.
So we were doing. I think that. When I got involved, I think they were doing about 50 shows a year, so almost one a week.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So that's huge. Because now kickboxing, you maybe see it we're talking about Glory, maybe every 4 months,
Yeah.
Back then, every week.
We were on a lot. Yeah, we were on a lot. And the PKA got great ratings. It actually did. It got good ratings, but they could never really make it work financially because Budweiser had put in a bunch of money into ESPN when they first got going. I gave them $1 million. That was a lot of money back in those days.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of the deal with Budweiser was that they couldn't show any other beer sponsors. And so that meant that that PKA couldn't go out. There wasn't that many sponsors that would be interested in doing combat sports. And so PKA wasn't able to bring in any other beer sponsors. And that was the biggest problem for PKA, is that they got good numbers. People watched the show and liked it, but PKA couldn't produce any revenue for ESPN.
Right.
Wow. Didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what kind of brought about the end of PKA and ESPN.
Wow. That was a great opening. I think that was because again, like, we don't know that stuff. That's not, especially like for you and I, like, that wasn't really around. I mean, in like
you guys were you weren't even around. Yeah, you're right.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, in the early 90s, it was Dennis Alexio, Rufus, those guys were still, that was kind of still, I would say, kind of at the end of its, before it transitioned into low kick and K1 and style as far as that goes. And then MMA kind of came up. So we kind of saw the tail end of that. Now, in some ways, like, to me, it was big because that's what I was into. But to other people, I don't really think it was as big, you know. So it was a whole different
Jeff,
era.
Would you say, because that was the same type of scenario for me, but Jeff, would you say you ever saw it on TV?
I remember seeing it on TV.
I don't think I ever did.
But it might have been either a pay-per-view that I ended up having it recorded,
That's a good point.
Or something like that. I mean, I remember some of the ones that I saw, and it was like Karate Mania, and I know that Ernie Reyes' team did demos and Kim Do did demos and stuff. I remember seeing those, and that was like 92, 93 or something.
Well, I honestly, I don't recall exactly when ESPN went off of. When PKA went off of ESPN, I don't remember what year, but I was thinking it was more toward the middle 90s or maybe late 90s. I'm not sure. No.
Right.
Could have been earlier. I just my memory fails at this point.
Well, it probably all started from when the martial arts really started for you. And last week we had a big focus on Texas.
Yeah.
In sport martial arts, and I just kind of mentioned, I said, if it wasn't for Texas, martial arts in America, or really worldwide, would not look the way that it does today.
Correct.
And you being from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, all right, we're very much in the start of when it all started to bloom and spread. Yeah. So what was that like? When was it? It was the 60s when you started martial arts, correct?
I started May 11th, 1967.
Okay.
And my brother Pat had been taking classes. He was still in high school. He was a senior. And I wasn't doing anything. I'd gotten married and just kind of flopped around from one job to the next. And so, gotten out of shape. I'd been a high school football player, not a very good one because I was not big enough and not fast enough. And so otherwise, though, I mean, I missed being involved in some kind of sport. So, when I saw him doing karate at our grandmother's front yard, and I remember thinking, dang, that's pretty cool. I liked what that. Look, he's kicking and doing things, and he broke a brick. And I thought, that's it. I'm going to do karate. And Patty and I went into the school, and I'll never forget the first day we're sitting there, and it was the Worth Health Studio. It was this little dingy, not like a health club of today. It was just a little tiny place, and they had a little room that was probably. I was thinking about this today. It was probably 25 by about 30. It was the size of the karate room.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And they had a little office, a little reception area out front. And it was not attractive at all. And the doors leading to the karate room were these two like saloon doors, the swinging doors.
Sure.
So we're sitting out there waiting to talk to the guy that ran the place. And all of a sudden, I could hear stuff going on in the karate room. It sounded kind of cool. You could hear some yells and things. All of a sudden, this guy comes blowing through the doors backwards. And he lands on the back, and he rolls about 3 times right to our feet. And he jumps up. He's a brown belt. He straightens up his uniform and yells and runs back in the room. And I thought, oh, man, that is cool.
Yes. That is cool.
So Patty and I signed up there with Pat. Our instructor was a guy named Chuck Lovin. And Chuck Lovin was old school, man. This is way before any padding or anything. You wore a cup, and sometimes, you might wear a mouth guard, except most guys didn't. And we didn't really, it was very untraditional. It wasn't the kind of training I got when I got to Junior A Institute. I'll tell you that. We would just, you'd go in there and you'd line up, and he had a beginner class and advanced class, and he would just say, all right, now we're going to do round kicks. Okay. And I said, what is a round kick? And he said, John, just watch the guy next to you and do what he does. I said, oh, okay. So that's pretty much how that he would teach. And later on, as we started progressing up the line a little bit, he would say, now, you boys, you're going to have to do that form, on your exam. So I want you to work on that on your own. Work on that out of the school, because we don't have time for that here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So if in those days, good form meant not forgetting it. If you got through it, they say, hey, you didn't forget it. That's good.
Wow.
Right. Wow.
So, yeah, that's where Pat and I both started, and Larry Carnahan came to that same little school.
Awesome. All right.
Chris Blum. Yeah, Chris Blum just chimed in. Chris is he's an insider on the show. He says, so honored to have Grandmaster Worley sign my first degree black belt certificate among some other amazing instructors. So, yeah.
Well, it's nice to hear from you. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
That's awesome.
We were down again in 67 when I started. Alan Steen was the head of the whole thing in the Dallas area. Pat Burleson in Fort Worth. And Junior E had come there, 10 years previously, and had started out. That's where Alan Steen got his training, was down training under Junior E while he was in college. Then Junior E he actually went to Washington, D.C. He was invited by a judo instructor to come to Washington, D.C. and to teach Taekwondo there in the judo school for a summer. And then he was going to come back to school.
I didn't know that's how he got there. Okay.
Yeah. Somehow the judo guy, learned of him and contacted him and invited him to come out.
Okay.
And we got there, and he taught there for the summer, and then he decided, I don't want to go to school. I want to teach Taekwondo. And then went out and found a location, opened a school, got somebody to put a little money behind him, and he opened his first school. So yeah, he was out there, and he would be coming back back and forth to Texas to do exams for Alan Steen and Pat Burleson, those guys. And Skipper Mullins was another one of the great guys. Fred Arana was and then what was really unique about Texas in those days is that I think unlike anywhere else in the country, Texas exported karate guys.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Fred Wren went up to St. Louis area. Jim Buten went to Oklahoma City. Jeff Smith went to Washington, D.C. first. He was the first to go to Washington, D.C. And then Pat and I and Gary Hestelow and Larry Carnahan all followed Jeff out to Washington, D.C. And so it was like, and the reason we all left Texas wasn't because we didn't like Texas, but nobody, the main cities had somebody in there that we knew, and you just didn't go into someone else's city.
Right.
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 So
wow.
Especially at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now in Texas, there's a karate school sometimes in the same shopping center.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy now.
I know it is. Right. That's what gave us the opportunity. Jeff Smith actually gave us the opportunity to come to Washington, D.C. because Mr. Ree, in about late 69, early 1970, he had a couple of schools where a couple of the guys got together and decided they wanted to have their own school, and so they just up and left him.
Okay.
And he had been going back. Jeff Smith was a brown belt at that time, and Jeff had been running a school down in Brownsville, Texas, that was a June Reed affiliated school. Mr. Reed would go back to Brownsville and help Jeff, and so he invited Jeff to come to Washington, D.C. He tested him for black and brought him to Washington, D.C. And then Jeff knew us, and especially Pat, and so he invited Pat because they still needed another guy. They still were one guy short. So he invited Pat to go to Washington, D.C. Pat was married at the time, and he and his wife, picked up and went to Washington, D.C. And then I told Pat, I said, well, do you think he's got room for anybody else? Can I come? And so Pat said, well, I'll ask him. I'm mainly worried about me, but I'll see what he says. So Pat got out there and kind of got established, and he talked to Mr. Reed, and Mr. Reed, and I talked on the telephone, and I said, Mr. Reed, he said, so you want to come here? I said, yeah, I do. Because at that time I was just really kind of floundering. I would go from one job to the next, to the next, to the next. I was married with 2 children, and I would go take this job that would be a pretty good job. I kind of have to talk my way into it. And by about lunchtime, I'd be going, what am I doing here? I hate this. I hate this. So then I'd quit that job and go to another one. And 3 months later, I'd be going to another one. So I was supposed to be an insurance salesman at that time, except what I would do is I would put on my suit and tie. And instead of going to sell insurance, I'd go down to grade school, take off my suit and tie, put on uniform, and work out. So
that's awesome.
Anyhow, Mr. Reed said, well, I don't have a job for you. And I said, well, if I come out there, would you just tell me that with the first teaching job that comes available that I can have it? And he said, you would come, 1,400 miles with your family and 2 kids and do that without a job? I said, oh, yeah, it sounds good to me. So
nice.
That's what I did. And by the time we got there, he had decided to go ahead and open up another school. So for the first 2 months that I was in Washington, D.C., I was building a school with another guy. He and I were putting the boards up and putting up the mirrors and doing all that stuff. And then that's how I got to Washington, D.C.
That takes out an extreme amount of guts.
Yeah, big time.
We were young and stupid. We didn't know better, We had nothing to lose, When you got nothing to lose.
So I kind of knew that part of the story. What I never really knew about that part was, what did Mrs. Worley say about all that?
Right.
Well, she has some reservations, but she's basically she's kind of as crazy as I am. She's fearless. She was fearless. She honestly was fearless. She just thought, well, let's go to Washington, D.C. If it doesn't work out, we can always come back. And if it really goes bad, I can always divorce you. So.
That's great. Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Oh man.
Well, that's what we did.
So in DC, how long were you there in the DC area?
We were there for about 3 years.
Okay.
And it was, I'll give you a little bit again of insight as to what it was like when we first got there.
Yeah.
Actually before, I went out with Pat before we actually went out there with Patty and the kids. I went out there for one short little trip. And so Pat and I had been driving all from Oklahoma City, went to a karate tournament in Oklahoma City from Dallas, went up to Oklahoma City winter tournament, got in the car the next day and drove to Washington, D.C. And we got in there about, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. We go in and classes are going on. We've been both driving all night, sleeping in the car, driving all night. And so immediately we put on uniforms and go out and start, working out and fighting with the guys. And then after we got done, Mr. Reed said, hey, he had a little health club attached to his main studio. His main studio was right in downtown Washington, 2000 L Street in Washington, D.C. And we go in and there's a little health club and he's got a sauna. So he said, let's go get a sauna. And I'm just, I've never been in a sauna. I didn't want, and he said, okay, you take your uniform off, get this towel going and go to the sauna. And then we get in there and he said, let me see your sidekick. And so I'm in a towel, and so I try to lock out a sidekick. I thought I always had a pretty good sidekick. I could make my uniform kind of pop when I did it. And he said, oh, I don't like your sidekick.
Oh my God.
Well, Mr. E, I'm not that crazy about it myself, but he said here. So he had me inside the sauna.
No.
The way we do, the way we teach basics is, we have, stand feet together, knee up, and then you pivot and you elevate to your shin is parallel to the floor, right? And then you lock it out on 3. So he said, okay, knee up, 1, pivot now. At this point, I'm completely buck naked. And
Wow.
And there's a couple of guys that I don't even know in the sauna. And I'm having to knee up, pivot, and lock out sidekicks. And so that was our first night in Washington, D.C. with Mr. Reed.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. Well, all right then.
True story.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Jonathan. That is amazing. I can't believe
amazing.
that.
Oh man.
But we were there for 3 years, and then another guy that came up from Texas named Gary Hestela and we're good friends. And we had determined a while ago, or earlier, that we wanted to try to go somewhere and open up a school. And so we actually sent out material out to Mr. Reed wanted us to go to Baltimore because it was close enough that his advertising would reach. And it would have made a lot of sense to go to Baltimore. Except that we knew that if we went to Baltimore, that we would, Mr. Reed would always be looking over our shoulder. So that was a good thing and not a good thing. And then we wrote out. What's your name? Yeah, Paige says Baltimore sucks too. So we,
yeah.
and we thought about going back to Texas, to Houston, maybe. Except again, George Minshew was down in Houston, and we thought about going to Boston. And we didn't know anybody in Boston. And then Gary said, "Well, what do you think about Minneapolis and St. Paul?" And I said, "Well, I kind of wanted to stay in the U.S." And he said, no, Vikings, the Twins, oh, yeah, Mary Tyler Moore, oh, yeah, Minneapolis, St. Paul. So, he and I, came out to Minneapolis and rented a hotel and stayed there for about 3 or 4 days. And we just rented a car and we'd go and we went to all the karate schools in town. And there were a few, not a lot. There was a Korean named Jun Sun-hyun who had, I think at that time, probably 4 locations. And another Korean named Young-Yu Lee, who had, I think, 1 location. So we just go and we'd go in and sit in the school and watch classes and say, man, we can beat these guys. We're as good as these guys. And they were good. They were all good. They were both lifetime martial artists, good guys. But we thought, we can handle that. So we went back and we tried to rent space from Washington, D.C. by dealing with a real estate guy. And Gary made a couple of trips up, flew up to look at space, and it wasn't working out. So finally we just said, let's just go there. So we threw everything in the truck and came to Minneapolis.
Wait. You moved? You moved without even having a space to go?
Did not know so. Didn't have a spot. Didn't have anything.
Yeah. Wow. That's
awesome. Yes, Arlene. Mid-America schools were the best. You're right.
We saved a little money and came up there and started driving around and looking at storefronts. Patty got a job right away, and Gary had his wife got a job, so we had a little income. And Gary and I would just get in the car every day and drive around and look at space and go back in the afternoon and call the numbers on from the release signs, and people would say, so what is it you want to do?
Yeah.
Well, open a martial arts school, a karate school. And they went, what? No. You don't. This is a shopping center. There's a suburb. You want to go downtown Minneapolis. I know there's a 3rd floor walk up there. We'll work out just fine for you. No, you don't get it. No, we want to be in the suburbs and all of that. So we the first 10 schools that we tried to sign a lease on, they turned us down.
Wow.
Yeah. And we were getting desperate. We've been there for 2 months and not having any luck at all, not getting anywhere. And finally, this old fellow that we called out in Bloomington, Minnesota, it's a kind of a southwestern suburb. It's a big town now. Then it wasn't that big. But we found a space there, and so I called the guy, and I could tell he was an elderly fellow. It's not like it sounds like me now. And he said, "So what do you want to do?" I said, "We want to open a karate school." A what? Karate school. I got karate school. And I don't know what that is. And so
I'm paying your rent.
Said, we'll show you. So we came over we had a little notebook and had pictures of people doing karate. And we showed it to him. And we had a little thing that showed 1-page financial pro forma that we'd worked up, showed that we had about $14 together. And so we went in and sat down with him, and we looked at the place, and he came out and he said, "Well, let me talk to my attorney. Let me talk." And he was probably that time 75 years old. And it turns out the guy was one of the first developers in Bloomington, and at one time owned about a third of Bloomington when it was cornfields. And so he was
Wow.
He was in good shape. Yeah, he was
right. Wow.
But he said, let me talk to my attorney. Let me talk to my accountant. I'll get back to you. So I'm thinking, okay, yeah, this isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I would call back in a couple of days. He said, well, you come back over here and meet with me. So we went back over. And he said, well, my attorney says I shouldn't do this. My accountant says I shouldn't do this. But I got a feeling about you boys.
Nice.
And so he ran into it.
That's awesome.
That's how we got
That's how you get started. Wow. So anybody
just so many.
listening, like just listen to this. Like it took 2 months. He came all the way over there from DC to there. Well, really Texas to DC, then to there, and just kept going until he got a yes. And that's what it takes. I mean, entrepreneurs out there, no matter your martial arts or whatever, like that's what it takes. Like if you want it, you got to do it.
So, Jeff, I'm going to talk to you for a moment on this one. So, Jeff, we've had, like we just mentioned to Mr. Worley before we started the show, we've had a lot of, legends on the show.
Yes.
Like Anthony Price,
right,
Arlene Lemus, even John Chung. And they had somewhat similarities where they had to, like, jump. They just went into it and they just said, well, we're going to give it a try.
Yep.
Nothing like this.
Right.
I've never heard of anything like this. Now, I knew of the move from Texas to DC. I didn't know the details exactly how you just spelled it out. And I definitely did not know the details of how you went from DC to Minneapolis and everything around it. Like you didn't even you had nothing. You just,
we had nothing.
We're going to go.
Yeah. Yep. We were, honestly, we loved karate. We loved teaching, and we were committed. We didn't go up here thinking, well, if it doesn't work out, we can always do this or that.
Right.
No if.
We never thought that at all. It was going to work out.
Yeah.
Wow.
I tell you what, though, like that's a big difference from Texas to Minneapolis. I'm just saying, weather-wise.
Okay, so speaking of weather-wise, Jeff, that's a good point. So last week we had Colby Northcutt on, who is one of the biggest champions in the NBL. And Sheena is now living in California, used to live in Texas. And I asked her, what's the weather like? And she says, oh, it's great here. It's great there. It's just great. Right. And I mentioned that this is the one thing I did remember talking to Mrs. Worley about. And I asked Mrs. Worley, I said, what's worse, Minnesota winters or Texas summers? And Mrs. Worley was the one who told me Texas summers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So you're echoing this. All right.
Oh yeah.
You tell me why then.
Yeah.
Well, because it's hot and it's just miserably and it's hot and it's hot and it's miserable. Other than that, it's okay. But
it's true. I've been in like San Antonio in like the end of June, like beginning of July, and it's terrible. Like it's so hot. Like, I mean, but I haven't lived there, so I don't know.
Well, the thing about Minnesota was that even though it was cold and it was an adventure for us. I mean, it was so different from anything we ever had. We loved it. We had fun with it.
Right.
You can always throw on another coat, and so
that's true.
We just we embraced it. We really did. And it kind of made our Texas family think we were crazy, and so that was kind of fun too.
Yeah. All right, so Arlene has a great question, and this kind of I think goes right into the next part of this. So when did Carnahan, Gordon, and your brother get there?
Okay, well, actually, Pat was in Washington D.C. and it was Jeff Smith, and then Gordon Franks was Pat's student. So Gordon had just made black belt just a little bit before the time that Gary and I came to Minnesota, and so we came up here. And then
drove into Washington as we drove out.
Larry Carnahan was coming. He's another one from Texas, and so Mr. Reed recruited him because he needed some. We were leaving, right. So he was actually driving into Minnesota. I mean, into Washington D.C. when we were driving out. I mean, just almost that kind of that way. He was up there just a very short time before we left. And we had known Larry from Texas and loved and respected him and respected his ability. And so he stayed there for I think he was there for 2 or 3, maybe 4 years, I think, before he came to, we recruited him. We were in Minnesota for 7 months. Excuse me, I something in my throat And Pat, we contacted Pat and said, "Hey, we got a school going up here. We'd like to open a second school." And excuse me a minute, guys.
Yeah, it's fine.
Go right ahead.
Yep.
It's your time. We're just living in it.
And I said, do you have any money? You want to come up? And so he said, "Yeah, I got a little money." And so he just got in the car and he came up, he and his wife, and they moved up. And we looked around and we found a second school. We got that one going. And so he was in that school, and Gary kind of would go, I think, back and forth, if I remember right, from one of the, between the two schools.
So at that point, there's you, Gary Hestelow,
Yep.
and then now Pat Worley.
Pat Worley, yeah.
Yeah.
And Pat was our credibility. We used to do things where we would run ads when there used to be this little weekly TV guide that came with a newspaper that everybody looked at. So that's where we would run an ad. And in the TV guide ad, we would say Friday night black belt sparring workouts, no charge, everybody invited. And so we just put that in the ad and invited anybody that wanted to come in and spar and fight. And basically what we were doing is just, getting our competition over there and beating them up. And then
That's amazing.
Making a name, make sure we establish some level of respect, among those guys. And
wow.
And Pat, at that time, Pat had already won the June Reese tournament and had been ranked. I think he was ranked in 1 year, I think 6th in the nation, regardless of body weight. The Black Belt Magazine used to do this thing where they would rate at the end of the year. They would rate point fighters, and he was, I think, as high as 6th 1 year, and then maybe 8th or 9th the next year. So he had a national reputation, and he was. Gary and I couldn't, carry his sparring gear. He was just that much better than us, and always. So that we pretty much we ended up, of course, alienating every other karate guy in town,
right.
Doing that. But guy named Truman Irving came in one time, and so we.
While you were in Minneapolis.
Yeah, he was living in Minneapolis, and he was with 3M. We didn't know him.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
No, he came in, and I'd seen his name in one of the karate magazines. He won a tournament somewhere, so he comes in, and we weren't able to intimidate him at all. Matter of fact, he took us and just kind of turned us upside down and dumped us on our head, and so immediately we became great friends. We all just hit it off really well with Truman, and then Gordon. Shortly after Pat had come up, I think if I remember that next fall, Gordon came up. His father was a physician in the Washington, D.C. area. And so Gordon came up to go to school at Carleton College. It's a very nice, very good school south of Minneapolis. Yeah. And, it's a tough school to get into. And so Gordon came up to go to school there. And Gordon would end up spending all his time up at the karate school. And instead of being, going to college. And so after his first year, we said, "Hey, Gordon, you want to go ahead and, come on in and let's open another school?" So he said, "Sure." So he talked to his parents, and they were, of course, devastated that he wanted to forego a medical career and become a karate instructor.
Right.
But they went for it. And so then we had 4 guys. And then, shortly after that, it was probably after we'd been up there about 4 years, and we had 3 schools going. That's when we invited Larry to come up and put a pretty hard press on him.
Yeah.
And so he came up, and we opened up another school then. So at that time, there were 5 of us. So I think we had 4 schools, and then we opened another school shortly after that. And then things kind of came unraveled after that.
Well, before that, you mentioned something that I kind of wanted to talk about. Is you said, we couldn't hold Pat's sparring gear.
Yeah.
Let's talk about sparring gear. I heard you were pretty much at the front of what sparring gear became and how it even started. How did that even become?
Well, back in Washington, D.C., so back up, a few years now, we're still in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Pat had just won the June Reese nationals. It was one of the, at that time, one of the big tournaments. There was that one, the Allen Steen's tournament, the tournament on the West Coast, the internationals, and then there was a New York tournament that was considered to be one of the top. So there were about 5 tournaments that were really the top ones. And Pat ended up going through and working his way through and ended up winning grand champion and beat Mike Warren in the final match to win that particular tournament.
Wow.
And that's what propelled him right away. And then shortly, maybe 4 or 5 months after that, we were fighting in a local tournament, and he and Mike Warren were fighting again for first place. And Michael Warren, I know you've heard, I'm sure you've all heard.
Yeah, I've heard their name.
Again, after watching martial art competitors for the last 50 plus years, he's in the top 5 all time, and just an incredible practitioner. I fought him twice, and I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. I never touched him. I was just awful happy. One time I fought him for first place in Philadelphia. And I got him moving backwards. I'm bigger than him a little bit, and I got him moving. I ran him off the platform, and I was just hoping that he sprained an ankle. I didn't want him to break anything,
You just wanted him to not fight anymore.
Yeah, just an ankle, a little ankle sprain. And then I looked at him, and of course he was like a cat. He just landed on his feet, and he just hopped back up there. And I reached over and straightened up his uniform for him, and shook his hand, and then just backed up and thought, "Oh God, he's going to kill me. He's for sure he's going to kill me." He didn't, but yeah. So we're back to Pat and Michael Warren were fighting for first place, and we're back in suburb of Washington. Warren did a spin hook kick and hit Pat with this is pre-pads, and hit him in the cheekbone with his heel, and it just exploded Pat's face. Broke his cheekbone, broke his nose. His eye socket was all messed up. So Pat had to go in for surgery and had to get his face all packed up with gauze, and it was a pretty bad injury.
Wow.
Mr. Reese said, gee, we have to do something about this. These injuries are going to kill us.
Right.
So,
literally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he could have. He could have died from that. Warren just was incredible. Yeah. So Mr. Reed went out and started, fooling around with foam rubber. And he'd buy these sheets of foam rubber, and he'd cut them into patterns, and he'd use some super glue, and he'd come in with these crude looking pads. He'd drill a couple of holes in them and put shoestrings through them. And then he would do something, like that for a hand pad and a foot pad. And then he would come in and he would give them to us and say, "Okay, go hit each other. And let me know what you think."
Yeah.
So we go out there and spar with them on and come back out and say, "Mr. Ree, I think we need thicker foam."
Yeah.
And that's how it started.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it started.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pat and Jeff Smith were the first guys to ever wear the gear in any tournament.
Right.
So,
Wow.
Right.
So what did people think about it when they saw it at a tournament?
They'd laugh and they'd call us duck, make duck sounds and just made great sport of it. But it took off like crazy. It just took off like wildfire.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. When we had John Chung on, he shared about because he was actually Jury was like his uncle, and so he was saying that. When he was trying to come up with the headgear, that he would just have him wear it and on his way to the karate school, like wear it in the car and stuff and stuff like that. So here, just see how this feels.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, we have a lot of awesome questions.
Let's take a moment for him. So Carmichael Simon has one.
Hey, Mr. Simon, how are you? It's nice to see you.
So we go, how did NK successfully adapt from the original ITF curriculum forms to our JRI martial ballet musical forms?
Well, Mr. Ree, once again, Jimmy Ree was the most innovative martial artist that's ever lived in the world.
That's a statement.
And when you think about everything that he pioneered and everything that he did, I can remember it just as clear as yesterday. We were working out. We used to have these meetings every Friday, and we get down at his main school, and we get down there, and he'd conduct a meeting, and then we would hang around and work out. And he said, "I've been doing something, working on something. I want to see what you think." So he brings out this music box and tape and plugs in, and he starts doing Exodus.
Uh-huh.
And I literally got tears in my eyes. I mean, we had never seen anything like that.
Correct.
And so from that, we went back. After we got to back, now we're back in Minnesota. We decided that we wanted to do a musical team forum.
Right.
And Joe Corley invited us to come to Battle of Atlanta. And so we worked on this forum. It was a Beethoven, the four of us. It was Gordon, Gary, Pat, and myself. And so I think we probably were the first to ever do a musical team forum in any kind of a public forum.
Wow, that's so awesome.
What year was that?
Oh man. Well, let me think here. Probably about 1976, maybe.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it brought the house down, though. I mean, people loved it. It was just because nobody had ever seen anything like that.
Correct.
From that, of course, everybody just took it and ran with it. So now it's just obviously it's become what it is today.
I mean, if you really think about it, it probably took. Think of how far ahead of his time he was.
Yeah.
With that, it probably took another 20 years before that was like universal. Like this is a division that people compete in. Like everybody just accepted.
I don't know if it was 20 years, but it probably was
at least 10.
It was a long time before people were doing it. Well, tournaments never offered it as a division. There was no division.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Or it could be like an option. Or if you want to bring your boombox, put it next to the ring, and here you go.
There wasn't a division for musical forum. So it was basically when we first, when tournaments first were started, it was just sparring and form, and there was no other thing, nothing else.
Right.
And then they said, "Oh well, you know what? Let's do weapons." And then you had sparring and form.
Just keep going. Yeah.
There's a bunch of other ones.
Yeah. So let's bring in Arlene's, the one about at the peak of Mid America. How many schools and members did you guys have?
Miss Lemus, hello. Patty says hello.
Awesome.
So, at the peak of Mid America, we had 7 schools, I believe. Let me think. I think we had 7 schools.
Okay.
And at that time, we had one school that we call it the super school. And it was for that time, it was probably unique in the United States. We had 2 big classrooms. We had a big lobby. We had a full-time phone operator. We had a back room, training room, 2 little actually private training rooms that were pretty good-sized rooms. And we had a whirlpool and saunas. And upstairs from that, we had a health club. And we were the first people in Minnesota to have Nautilus Health Club equipment. And then we had our offices up there. So the 5 of us all had an office up there. So it was a pretty big deal. And so we were there. And one time, for those days, we would get maybe averaging 80 to 90 introductories a month.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
At that one school. And so, it was rocking and rolling and doing a lot of money. And then they came in and decided that the main thoroughfare that ran right in front of us, they were going to turn it into an interstate. And it took them 5 years, and nobody could get to the school. Nobody could figure out how to get to the school. Staff would call and say, I can't figure out how to get there. There's the road's all torn up, and there's detours everywhere.
Wow.
So we went from 85 introductories down to about 4.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was a tough one. That was a really tough one. So
yeah, man.
But we were cooking there for a while when we were all up there together. It was fun.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. So, Alex, do we want to go? I kind of want to
hit a couple other questions here.
Yeah,
Ross Cook has one that I think is kind of funny. He said, "Hot take: fighters from different climates fight differently. Example: warm weather fighters are better kickers on average." I think that's an interesting take.
I never thought about that. Mr. Ree had a affiliated school down in the Dominican Republic, and those guys could all kick. Every one of them, and all those guys were great kickers. So maybe there's something to that. I don't know. I think it has to do with hips and ligaments. Yeah, right.
I don't know. I think it has to do with who the instructors are and things like that. That's what I think. But I mean, in the South, where I live in the Southeast, yeah, it's known for a lot of kickers. Like Nicky Carlson and Marty Knight and all of those guys that were great kickers. But I mean, you think of Texas area. I mean, a lot of them didn't kick because they're going to get kicked in the groin. So,
okay, here's one,
I mean,
Jeff. Let's piggyback off of that one. So about this time last year, Jeff and I put out the list. Jeff put out the list of the best kickers in tournament history for forms,
right?
And I did one for fighting. Who are some great kickers that you've seen? Because you've seen everybody that maybe you've forgotten more about martial arts than anybody else will ever know.
Correct.
Well,
who are some people that you thought, all right, this is someone?
Pat Worley's at the top of my list, and I'm very prejudiced. Pat was one of the first guys. He and Bill Wallace were very similar in the way they fought. Both of them were left-legged. It was all front leg. But Pat actually was a little more, I think, he had more variety of technique than Wallace. Wallace didn't need to because, nobody could defend against his front leg anyway. So he never.
Right.
But Pat used to, when we were just still brown belts, he would think about techniques all the time. He would all the time come up and he said, "What do you think about this? What if I slide in here and I stick my front leg up on your hip, and then when you think you're going to block that off, I jump off my back leg and round kick you with my back leg." I say, "That's stupid. Nobody can do that. That won't work." And then, of course, he'd go, bam, bam, and then it was, okay, yeah, that works. Okay. But so Pat is right up there. And again, Mike Warren, in the early days there, Mike Warren was as good a kicker as I. Yeah. Pound for pound, he may be the best all-time kicker. Raymond, of course, just from a standpoint of effectiveness. There's a guy named Daniel Richard from Canada. You probably haven't heard of him, but man, that guy was just incredibly fast front leg. Man, I don't know. There's so many now. Everybody can kick now. Everybody.
Yeah, I knew she was going to.
Arlene gets on me because I don't think Bill Wallace is a top 10 kicker. Arlene gets on me about that one. Love you, Arlene.
Arlene, come on. Nobody.
No, she says I don't think he is.
You don't think he is?
Yeah. Alex doesn't. Yeah, Alex didn't even put him in the top 20.
He beat everybody in the world, and nobody could prevent him from doing so. So that's kind of makes him a good kicker. I mean,
of course he's a good kicker. I'm going to make people up. You know what? I don't care. So Bill Wallace. No, I'm not going to get into it. No, it's not. We're not going to distract from our topic.
Here's the thing about comparing fighters from one decade to the next.
Good.
You can't do it. You can't do it.
No.
It is really hard to do that. You're right.
Guys that are doing things today that guys didn't do 50 years ago. If
Correct.
you put a good guy, a talented guy 50 years ago, put him in today's world, he would be doing that same stuff.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, they would. Great fighters were great fighters. Doesn't matter what era you put them in. They would always be great. Jeff Smith would have been a great fighter in any era.
Yes, agreed.
That's a good point. Yes.
He would have. And, Nasty Anderson would have been a great fighter in any era. Arlene Lemus would have been a great fighter in any era.
Yes.
Definitely. Since Arlene's watching, I'm going to tell you a story about her.
All right.
One of the early Diamond Nationals, we used to have we bring the top kids, the kids fighters on stage in the match, and I think Arlene was. If I had to guess, I would say she was maybe 10, 11 years old, and she won what her side of the thing, and Rick Rufus won his side of the thing. And so the fight that night up for first place with the kids was Arlene versus Rick Rufus.
Yeah.
And by the time it was all over with, Rick Rufus is crying and Arlene's taking first place.
Wow.
She actually told that story. She did tell that.
She talked about it. Yeah.
True story. I saw it.
Wow. That's
awesome.
Actually
a good segue. Let's go right into that because the Diamond Nationals.
Yes.
It is become the premier event. Now, this is also fitting. This would be about the time, if a pandemic didn't happen this year, this would be about the time the Diamond Nationals would be happening.
Yeah, last weekend. Yeah, we'd be laying around, smiling and resting today.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
First off, let me just say the Diamond Nationals. I appreciate your kind comments. There's an awful lot of great NASCAR tournaments in the country, and
Of course.
we like to think that we try to do things a good way, but those guys do a great job too. They really do.
Yeah.
But we're this would have been 43rd, I think it is 43rd year for Diamond Nationals.
Yes.
Yeah, the first year was 78, right?
I brought notes. 1978. Keith Vitale won the Diamond Ring that year.
Yes.
So, from what I remember, and there's not a lot, I remember stories that I've heard. Obviously, I wasn't alive in 1978, right? So, that now you're in Minnesota. Everybody that we just kind of talked about, how we transitioned. Now they're in Minnesota, and now we want to host this big tournament.
Yeah.
Now, I heard what you called the tournament. What did you call the tournament?
Well, the first year we did a tournament, it was in March. I'm guessing it would have been about 76, maybe 77. We called it the Everything You Always Want to Know About Karate, but We're Afraid to Ask Tournament.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
That is fantastic.
Wow.
And we almost got snowed out. It was on the same weekend as the hockey tournament, and it always snows in Minnesota. But we didn't know. We hadn't been there very long. We didn't know it snowed on the hockey tournament.
Right.
So we did the tournament. I think we had about 300 competitors, maybe something like that. It was, we managed to get out of there without losing a whole lot of money. We gave T-shirts to everybody that came as a free, giveaway. We gave everybody a T-shirt.
Yeah.
We only did that year. We never did that again.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the logo was we had the Everything You Always Want to Know About Karate, etc. And I had a karate guy standing there like Superman with a Superman cape on, and it was I wish I had one of those shirts. It was very cool.
If anybody has even a picture of that, if anybody's even got a picture of somebody from the past, post that. That would be fantastic.
I'm sure somebody does. I don't know.
I know.
But we just at that time the Battle of Atlanta was the tournament that we all wanted to grow up to be that. We all wanted our tournament. So we ripped off Joe Corley at every opportunity, and we just took everything we saw him doing that we liked and tried to put that into the Diamond Nationals. And we wanted the Diamonds to be the event that competitors really felt good about going to. That was in the very early days of tournaments. A lot of times, the promoter, whoever it was, the tournament was more about glorifying the promoter in some ways. He would walk around and whoever it was, and kind of just I'm master so and so, and we just tried to do everything we could to make it fun and fair and well run and well officiated for competitors. We weren't worried about spectators so much. I mean, as it turns out, of course, they got to be an awfully big, huge part of it. But it was just we wanted to make the competitors happy.
Yeah, and that's something I always have felt about the Diamonds. And to me, it's still, even though I'm from Virginia, to me, like that felt like the tournament that I always wanted to go to, and it just always held just a prestige,
Thank you.
It just always was. And, I made sure for the longest times, I think my first 10 years on the circuit, I didn't miss a Diamonds, and so it was just, making sure that I had to be there. And that was the one you wanted to be at. So,
we appreciate you saying that. I know Larry Carnahan would be very gratified to hear you say that. Now,
yes,
primarily, Larry's the guy. He's really the guy that is the glue that holds everything together in JLB Productions when it comes to Diamond Nationals. So, he deserves a lot of credit. He's a good guy.
Awesome.
So, Mr. Worley, I love the Diamond Nationals pretty much almost more than any other tournament. And been to a lot. I've been to every tournament in the world. Jeff's been to every tournament in the world. All right. So, but there's just little things that the Diamonds does that other tournaments don't. Like, all right, here's an example. And I'll never forget, but right before, this was just, I would say within the last 7 years, maybe, before like during the finals, there's a back area. Some tournaments have this so that you can warm up before you go to perform or fight. Some tournaments have that, right? So that's not rare. But what happens, and Jeff, you can speak on this too. Jeff, when you're in the back and you're waiting to warm up, you're constantly wondering, when do I go, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not the diamonds.
Yeah.
Not the diamonds. The diamonds, you can hear what Mr. Worley's saying in a speaker system inside that warm-up area. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Right.
And somebody just, because I'm always going to talk out loud. Somebody kind of leans over and tells me, and they tell me, I don't think they knew who I was. And they say, hey, the diamonds just does stuff a little bit different than everybody else.
Yep.
I'm thinking, and you don't even know who I am. Obviously, I'm going to say that, but okay. So
we appreciate those comments very, very much. I mean, we have such a great team. Alex, you were a part of that for a long time. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We have so many dedicated people that really they care about the diamonds as if it was their tournament. They all feel it that way. People like Kelly Worley and Jim Albertson, and,
absolutely.
Jeff Steiner, William Hill, those guys. Greg Sutherland. They all feel as strongly about the tournament as we do. So they do everything they can, to try to make sure it runs smoothly and to try to make it a pleasant experience for as many people as you possibly can.
Yeah,
I gotta hear. Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I was just going to say, what are some of the, I guess maybe those first 10 years, or what were maybe some memorable moments that you remember?
I got a story.
Stand out.
I got a story for you. So I was thinking about this earlier. I think if I had to guess, it was probably 1980, maybe 1981, 82, somewhere around that. Ray McCallum was up. You all know the name Ray McCallum.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
We talked about him last week.
Yeah, and Alvin Prouder. Do you know the name Alvin Prouder?
Yes, sir.
Alvin had went on to become a great kickboxer. I mean,
yes, he was.
He was a champion full contact guy.
Never saw him live, but I know him.
Yeah. Well, he and Raymond were fighting in the last match. The winner goes and fights for the diamond ring. And they just went back and forth and back, and it was exciting. It was elimination fight, and this is not in the finals. This is just in the eliminations during the afternoon, and so they go hard. And anyhow, Alvin, and it got a couple of times guys had to they had to be separated. It was getting very, very heated, and Alvin wins the first fight at 1 point or whatever. So then. They leave. We're kind of it's the last fight of the day before we get ready for the finals. So I'm going to walk out of the arena, and I walk up and I see, people gathered around, and I run up there, and Alvin and Raymond are rolling around the floor in the hallway. Yeah. And so, we pulled them apart, filled them up. Raymond said, I'm sorry. And I said, Alvin, you're disqualified tonight. You know that. And he went, I know. I'm sorry. So, anyhow, we always referred to that event as the hallway open.
Wow. So,
okay.
Man.
Whoa. Yeah, there was a lot packed into that. So they're fighting.
This is the fight you keep asking about, Alex. This is the one that you keep. This is the one you keep asking.
We had a whole
you just keep saying there's the wrong person. You keep saying Robert Harris, and it was actually Alvin Prouder.
That's right.
This is the one that you always ask about. Yeah.
And I don't know. To this day, no one seems to know really what got them going. Once they walked out of there, they were both up in the hall.
Yeah, everyone keeps hearing things and stuff, but
I don't know.
It's all he said, she said stuff.
We got nose to nose, and first thing I know, they clenched up and on the floor and going at it for real. And then after that, I think they actually got to be friends. I think they got to be pretty good buddies. After that all happened.
Isn't it weird about martial arts? You think about it. We sign up to smash each other, and when we're done smashing each other, we shake each other's hand, we hug each other, and we become friends. The harder we smash each other. And actually, when you're already friends in martial arts, you actually want to smash your friend harder than you do anybody else.
Yeah.
When you say it out loud, it's weird.
It's crazy. Arlene, Arlene wants to ask a question. I know before. And it's did John Longstreet train from beginner to champion with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was my student. Yeah, he was my student initially,
Okay.
and one of the most talented guys we've ever had.
Awesome. And he ended up winning at the Diamonds.
He won it. Yeah, he won a diamond ring 1 year, then went on to become a great kickboxer as well.
Yes.
He was just he was a very tough guy, smart fighter.
Awesome.
So those are some of the early ones, and Jeff asked exactly what I wanted to ask. Like, tell us something interesting that maybe we wouldn't know, and that was definitely something I would have wanted to know. That was great.
Yeah. I think he has another one or two. Do you have another one or two maybe to share?
Well, when you talk about great Diamonds champions, and really when I look at this list, I can't think of too many people who would be considered great fighters that aren't on this list. Right. The guys in the very early days, Wallace and Smith and those guys aren't on this list because they had already transitioned into full when this all started.
Correct.
But, I mean, it's a who's who of martial art history when you read down. And when I look at and try to think about who's the best fighter I've ever seen at Diamond Nationals, who's the best woman, who's the best man. I can't do that. I can't say that Arlene Lemus isn't. I mean, I don't know how she would have done against Nikki Carlson Lee, but that would have been. I'd love to have seen that one.
Yeah,
I'd love to have seen them at Arlene at her peak and Nikki Carlson Lee at her peak. I don't think you could have had a better fight anywhere. And then when you put Linda Denley in there,
right?
And Linda wasn't. She wasn't great technically. She wasn't a great kicker. She wasn't built for it. But nobody was stronger and more fierce and just overall nobody since all the way up and down. I don't think so. It's just and I was going over. I was just kind of looking again at the list of champions and everything that we've had here, and it's just I like doing that because I just think, well, what a great history. And how many wonderful, great, world class, world renowned fighters didn't fight at Diamond Nationals in these years. I can't think of very many of them that didn't.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And I think something that the Diamonds did, and I know for me when I started my tournament, I took from that was having an award that stood out and went when you thought the Diamonds, you knew of this award. This is why I'm going to get it. It had it made it a classic. It made it, a signature event, but also a signature award. And the Diamond Ring was that, and so I know for me, that's what those events that did that, those are the ones to me that it meant more, to win.
I would like to take credit for the Diamond Ring, but I don't think I can. I don't really remember who of us came up with the idea. It may have been Gary Heslow. Actually, it may have been. But anyhow, it was a good idea.
Yeah, it was a good idea. Yeah.
Because there's a few just awards like that in martial arts where the award itself is something that you don't ever let anything happen to. There's a few of them. The Warrior Cup. That's big because it's a monstrosity of a trophy.
It's huge. Yeah.
You need an extension on your house, especially if you're Ross Levine.
Right.
And then the diamond. Now, I talked to Charlie Lee about the Rolex, and he said the reason why he wanted to do a Rolex challenge, he said he wanted to emulate what the Diamonds did because he watched other teammates split prize money, and then the final fight wasn't exactly the intensity of what you wanted. And he said, you can't split a diamond. Yep. You can't split a Rolex.
Right. Yep.
And he just 100% verbalized, I want to do it like the Diamonds, but I can't give out a diamond because there already is a diamond.
Right. Yeah. And then at that, the only other one to me that was the gold watch that Bluegrass did. But
sure, yeah.
So for him, it's like, well, let's up that. Let's, because really, what else you gonna do? For me, I did a belt buckle for my tournament. I made sure that was something different, and I wanted to keep kind of leveling it up. And I think tournaments that do that, they have a little bit of an advantage, because they're just ahead, of the curve. I think they're making it to where it stands out, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and that's true. I think again, the tournament itself, just everybody just refers to it as the Diamonds, and
Correct.
That's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
So I know that event is always forward thinking. What are we going to do? What are we going to do 3 years from now? Is there anything you can tell us about what's going to happen maybe next year, the year after with the Diamonds? Is there anything you can tell us?
I'm going to be very honest with you.
Sure.
I can't tell you anything because with everything that's been going on with COVID, and we really haven't been able to really plot and plan and meet and talk and do the things that we would normally do.
I get that.
And so we're looking at 2021, and I'm sure that those kind of conversations will be being held. I know that we tried to do some things to try to make the event more balanced by bringing in more fighting, trying to figure out more ways to get fighters up without making the show run 5 hours.
Correct.
Right.
That's Mr. Carnahan and I have been business partners for 45 years and longer, and the only time we ever have disagreement is when I keep saying, "Can we just cut something out? Can we make? We want to make the show. I want to make the show shorter. I want to be out of there in 2.5 hours."
Correct.
And he of course is trying to figure out how to make everybody happy, because he's the guy that people come up to all over the country and complain if their kid doesn't get to get on stage.
Correct. Correct.
So,
yeah, it's a balance. Yeah, it's tough.
It really
You're
is.
right. You're right. So Jeff and I talk about that a lot. I think Jeff and I agree with you, but let's just be honest he's obviously doing something right.
Right.
He's obviously doing something right.
Oh, yeah.
He is kind of the gold standard as far as, we'll call him a commissioner, I know that's not his title. He's the president of NASCA, but essentially he's kind of a commissioner,
Yeah.
So he has kind of made NASCA the gold standard as far as what you want to do with your tournament.
Right.
So you can't make everybody happy. There's no possible way. But I think we all feel exactly like you just verbalized, but everybody's showing up, right? So he's obviously doing something right.
Well,
nobody's going to be 100% happy.
Well, when it comes down to it, when we have any of these kind of discussions, he always wins. It doesn't matter what we talk about.
Right.
He'll be very patiently listening to me, kind of patting me on the head, and then he'll just say, "I really think we got to do this." I said, "Okay."
Wow.
Yeah, I can tell you this: in 45, 46 years, he and I and Bill Dunkley, who's our third party of JLB, have never had an angry discussion.
Wow, that's so awesome.
Not once. I think that's absolutely.
That is remarkable.
Yeah,
that's amazing. All right, so Carmichael has another great question, I think, and this would be a good one to kind of. So, will NASCA or Diamonds be passed on to the next generation to maintain the lineage and legacy of our sport? So, let's just speak on the Diamonds, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is certainly what we want. I'm 76 years old, and I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to even be around, much less be able to do what I do at the Diamonds. But and Larry's 73, I think, just turned 72 or 73.
Right.
72, and so he's going to be around for a while, and we've got some great guys on our team. Again. Guys like Jim Albertson that have been with us from day one. He's been with us from day one.
Yeah.
Sula Masney's been with us almost from day one. Those kind of people that have been for so long. So we know
Greg Sutherland.
Yeah, Greg. Kelly. My son Kelly. Kelly's been working his ass off at the Diamond National since he was about 5.
Right. Correct.
We make him, drag out and go pick up, chairs and move them over here, Kelly. I'm only 5. You got to do what you got to do. Come on. So, we've got qualified, good people that are waiting in the wings in a sense to carry on. We just haven't quite figured out when and how anything like that will happen, but
yes, sir.
I'd love it. I'd love it if I could be 90 years old and know that the Diamonds were still going on. That
Right.
it was still out there.
Right. Man, that's great.
Jeff and I will be there in 2021. We'll have Inside
Yes.
Scoop. We'll have a station right there at the Diamond Nationals.
Yes, we definitely will.
Let's be honest. I'll tell you this: if the pandemic didn't kick me out of competition this year, it was going to be hard to get in myself. My body is beat the heck up. I'm amazed I got in last year.
Well, I've got 2 artificial hips and an artificial knee, and so yeah, karate can take its toll. But then my heart and lungs are in great shape. So what are you going to? There's a trade off, I guess.
That's right.
I guess I'd rather have those in great shape.
I think so.
Oh man, this has been great, Master Worley. This has been amazing. This has been awesome. Just so much insight and just some stories that maybe a lot of our listeners don't hear, don't know. And it's cool too because you kind of tied in so many different other interviews we've had and tied them together. So that's been awesome.
Well, I hope you haven't considered it a waste of time. So.
Oh, never.
No,
never.
I've been on the edge of my seat all night.
Yeah, same.
And let's just for everybody listening, we really just for the sake of time had to bullet point a lot of this.
Correct.
We really had to bullet point this in just a couple of areas.
Right.
With some of our other guests, what we do is we go, tell me how it started, and we just go down the timeline up until the present. You've just, like I said, you've forgotten more about martial arts than any of us will ever know.
Yeah, and I've got a fairly short attention span, so I guess I jump around.
It's all right. It's all right. Oh man. So this is how we let all of our guests finish up, and we do give your voicemail to the world. All right. The world is listening right now to the Inside Scoop and to Master John Worley.
One thing to tell
them. So what is your voicemail to the world? What do you want to tell the world?
Well, first off, I want to just say thanks to the job you guys are doing. I think this is great. I think people are getting a lot. I hope they're getting an awful lot out of this. Bringing all these other people in and getting their insights and getting their experiences. I think that's a terrific thing. I commend you for that and congratulations on what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Man, that's hard to. I didn't really think about this. So,
it's okay. You're not running for president.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Oh, thank goodness. I guess as when it comes to martial arts and as a profession, I know that there's so many more people now that are doing it really, really well and doing it really, really professionally, and are able to make a good living and have a good life. And I would just encourage people who have that spark, that you guys have and that I apparently have, and to not be afraid to pursue that, not be afraid to pursue your heart. And I know all of us would have been teaching karate and have for free. And the fact that somebody was going to pay me when I got to Washington D.C. to teach karate, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And I thought, how can I possibly be this lucky? I get to teach karate, and I'm going to actually be getting paid for it. That's beyond my wildest dreams. And so, if you have that kind of passion, don't be afraid to take a shot.
I love it.
That's it.
I love it. And I think
Absolutely.
I think everyone, especially right now, karate schools have gone through so much this year. I think we all need to hear that, because just because of a pandemic, that doesn't mean that, like you said, 2 months, every day getting a no. Hey, you got to just keep pushing.
You do, and this is we're going to get past it when everybody says that, and it's true. We will. We will. Things may not ever be exactly the same as they were pre-COVID, but whatever it is, good martial artists, good professionals they'll make whatever changes they need to make in order to be able to survive and prosper. And so I just want to encourage all of them and anybody out there watching to hang in there, hang in. It's going to end at some point, and we can all hopefully get back to normal, whatever normal is going to be.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate all of you. appreciate that you're dedicating your lives to martial arts the way that all of us have.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Worley. I look forward to seeing you again. Hopefully, it's before Diamond Nationals 2021.
I hope so. Thanks again, guys. It's been a great time. Thank you.
Sir.
Okay. See you.
You have a great night.
What do I do now? How do I get out of here?
I think you just there. You did it. There you go.
Oh man, that was awesome.
Right? Were you on the edge of your seat too for some of that?
I was. And just some of the things that I think I needed to hear. I think a lot of us, need to hear just the struggle stories, the not giving up. Just remind yourself, just hearing again that you just got to keep going. So it's pretty awesome.
Well, like I mentioned, I had heard like the general stories, like, yeah, this is where we started, this is where we went, this is kind of some of the stuff we did.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff that he left out, but I didn't know that they just decided, no, we're going to jump. We're just going to go. We're going to go to Minnesota. Some Texas boys go to Minnesota without anything for 2 months.
It's crazy.
Not just solo.
Right.
Like just a person doing that would be one thing. You go there with your wife.
Right.
Not just your wife, your kids.
2 kids.
Like,
and then
no, at that point I think it was partner, 3 by the time he got there.
Right. Wow. And then his partner had the same thing. So
what do you and that's just getting to school. And Jeff.
Yeah.
Once the school pops up, you're not making money.
No.
Then. No. It takes a while.
Yes. It's crazy.
So look at but then now think about this. What if he never did?
Right.
What if he thought, I just can't. Like, I got to protect my. And what if he justifiably, reasonably said, I have to really protect my family.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I can't subject them to this.
Right.
They're my first priority. I need to protect my family and I need to make sure that they're safe, which 100% would have been the right thing to do, because there's not a wrong choice. If you decide that that's what you're going to do, like you are doing that, you're protecting your family, but then think of what would happen.
Yep.
None of us. I wouldn't be in martial arts like that.
Right.
Maybe I would have. Maybe I would have been in one of the other schools.
Maybe you wouldn't have reached and been a part of so many people's lives.
Right. But the school I started in was 1.5 miles from my house, and it was an NK school.
Right.
And you know why I started in karate? Like why I started in NK? Because we were. It was 1.5 miles from our house, and we didn't know it was there. My dad's boss.
So true.
Well, Mike, you said it. Mike's his wife is the MVP. You're right, Mike.
Definitely.
Because all it would have taken is this is done.
Yeah.
Right?
Nuh-uh.
All right. So, like, my dad's boss was a national karate black belt. Now, my brother and I, we were in a Karate Kid, and it was the late 80s, so we were talking about, or it was the early 90s, and we were getting into Ninja Turtles. So we were constantly, kicking walls in the house. I'm like, this is awesome, man. My dad's like, oh, you're a black belt? My kids love this. Where should they go? Where do you live? Oh, let me connect you. All those things that if
awesome.
they had never went there, all those things had to happen in order for just, measly old me to be able to make that. But I'm just one guy. There's thousands and thousands of guys like me that he impacted. Cool. Look at that.
I know. It's awesome, man. All right. You want to get into some funny videos before we finish up?
Let's do that, man.
Let's do it. All right, guys. We got our funny videos. There we go.
Videos for your pod. Let's see how it goes. Your
right,
viral videos.
What do we got today? Here? Right.
Lyrics coming at you with supersonic speed.
All right. So,
shut the front door. Who's this kid?
All right. So, what it says first, he's just kind of chilling. He's practicing his bow. All right. And then it says when your crush comes in, and then he just starts going off.
Yeah. And he turns into Jackson Rudolph. Who is this kid, though?
He's legit. His name's Alex Weber, 1029. That is, I do not. So
I don't know
that is Alex Weber, and you can check him out on TikTok. And he's got a lot of views for this, 1.3 million. And he is just going off. And so that's pretty true the way it is. When you're just practicing, calmly chilling, and then some girl comes in and next thing you know, you're just flying off the handle going nuts, right? So
that's pretty dope.
It's pretty cool.
What
All
is
right.
this thing?
I love.
Oh my gosh!
This guy is trying to break a rock, right? And look at
He's
the
gonna-
guys' faces in the back. They're all like, "Oh God, he's not breaking."
Yeah, because he's not getting anywhere. He's gonna bust his whole arm off.
And he's just
Oh my!
trying to hammer fist it, sort of.
No, he's not
or
even
palm-
hitting it
no,
with his hand. He's hitting it with his forearm.
forearm. Yeah. Oh, it's just nuts.
And this is just a straight up solid piece of stone.
Yeah.
But
And
he doesn't break it, does it?
No.
Oh my gosh, this is just painful to watch.
It's crazy. So yeah, this is from Sarah,
this is horrible.
Sarah Hreey. I don't know how to say that, but yeah, the stone is really hard, and he's doing it. I'm too
Holy
sexy.
Have you ever done anything like that?
No. All right, this is cool. This is one championship, and this is like when you enter the Matrix, and so it's all these crazy dodges that happen in these fights, man. So some cool stuff here.
Wow.
Boom, where they both duck head kicks.
See, that was the coolest.
A round kick and duck, and then again round kick, and then he hits him in the leg. Then a round kick, and then he ducks. It's just. And the spin hook kick duck is nice because he had his leg and he spun.
Well, the best one was the first one when they both duck.
Yeah.
At the round kicks to the head, like back to back.
Yeah, this is cool stuff. So one championship has some awesome fights, and they do MMA and kickboxing. And sometimes they do kickboxing in a cage. Sometimes they do it in the ring. Sometimes they do MMA in the ring. I know for both Colby's and Sage's fight, it was in a ring. But they've also done it in a cage as well. So it depends on where they're at. So they'll mix it up. So it's pretty
wow.
cool.
Colin jumps in. I know him talking about Mr. Worley. Yeah.
No, he's talking about the guy with the bow, I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
That makes more sense, actually.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's cool. All right.
So that was fun, man. Such a great show today, man. It was great. We may need to get like another part in the the beginning of the year or the second half of next year, and kind of bring it back around.
Could. We did it we did it with Coach Conway, where we had
a
2-part show.
Right. Well, we can always bring any.
We could have done a 4-part
show.
show.
We can bring any guest back to talk about anything.
Oh yeah. So, it's not a one-time deal.
No. So we got this. So awesome. We got someone who says he knows Chuck Norris. All right. Here we go.
Actually, speaking of Chuck Norris, what's actually funny is, so I put up a post of Mr. Worley today, and Chuck Norris was a center referee in a fight with he and his brother Pat. So he and his brother Pat were fighting. I believe that fight, Mr. Worley said it was for first place, and Chuck Norris was the referee. So look at the photos. And what's interesting is that's beardless Chuck.
Right.
Yeah. Well, he looks a little different.
Yeah. Well, we did last night on the Fist Kicks and Flicks. We reviewed Chuck Norris movie, A Force of One, and talked about that. And it was Chuck and Bill Wallace in that movie. It was great. So pretty cool stuff.
Beardless Chuck does look strange.
Yeah.
It'd be like, honestly, Jeff would be kind of like seeing you without a beard.
Really? Well, I've had one for a while now, so yeah. So it's.
I mean, I have not seen you without one
since I was a kid.
I mean, it's at least 16 years.
Yeah, probably.
It's got to be something like
Probably so. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So don't get rid of it. You can grow it, but you can't. But you can't get rid of it.
I don't want to grow it too much. I did that once. It was hideous. So.
Yeah, you didn't like that. I thought it was okay.
No. Oh man, this is great.
This has been another episode of Inside Scoop with Alex and Jeff. I'm Alex Dingman.
I'm Jeff Doss. See you guys next week. Have a blessed weekend.